Thank you, Doris. Appreciate that music. That was really good. I want to welcome everybody again to Grace Ministries at Rafa's, and also known as Trinitarian Grace International, our weekly meeting. You guys at the chapel, good to see you. Good to see all of you that's here from all over the world and all over the United States as well. You know, I'm speaking today, and I got a topic that is just one that you hear a lot. I mean, you hear it spoken about a lot in quote church circles or religious circles or whatever, and it's forgiveness. And forgiveness is a big deal. We all, because they say, oh, well, that's what Jesus did. What he did gave us forgiveness. But how good are we at forgiving? You know what I mean? I can't claim to be an expert at it myself. I try. I can think of some rare situations maybe in my life that if I'm not careful, I'll still hold uh, grudges, as they say in the recovery circles, resentments. No wonder they say it's the number one thing that leads you back to doing whatever it is you've been doing to hurt yourself. Uh, it's not just drugs and alcohol. It can be any kind of behavior that you're doing that's destructive. But isn't it pretty obvious that when we hold grudges, we hold resentments, that it's hard to get past those kind of things. It's hard to in our self forgiveness. I was listening to my friend Keith speak earlier today that on the message he gives at his group in Florida about loving your neighbor and loving yourself. And I've spoke on that here before. It says, what is the new commandments? Love the Lord thy God with all your heart and your neighbor as yourself. And we'll say, oh man, I love the Lord and I love the neighbor. But then when we look in the mirror, we find sometimes we don't like the person in the mirror so much. And when we say we love our neighbor and we don't love ourselves, I think we're kind of fooling ourselves a little bit. I'll be the first to tell you, there's been plenty of times in my life that I've looked in the mirror, and if I was really honest, I didn't really forgive the guy in the mirror. Because, I've told everybody, every church group where I've ever spoke, I've said, hey, relax. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about me just because a guy got a title as pastor or preacher or whatever you want to call it. Relax. I've probably outsinned all of you. I can compare sins with anybody. So, there's no holier than thou here, I guarantee you. But, it's something about this forgiveness thing that I don't know about you, but sometimes it's hard to get a grasp on because, as we know, if I do wrong, I want to be forgiven. But if you hurt my family or hurt somebody close to me, what I usually want? I want justice. I want something done. I want, and that's the way it is sometimes. I want, you'll catch yourself sometimes if you're like me. You might be watching the news, which I advise against that, but you're sitting there and you're watching the news and something comes on about some heinous crime and something will come out of your mouth like, they'll take him out behind the courthouse and shoot him. You ever heard that? You ever said it? You ever thought it? I have. But what about that mirror? That goes back to that mirror, looking in that mirror. I'm not here to get everybody to all of a sudden step up and confess your most terrible, most awful thing you've ever done to us here in the group. But I want you to think about maybe the worst thing that you've ever done that's caused you shame, that's caused you embarrassment. Do you not seek forgiveness? Do you not want that to be forgiven and washed away, as they say? Well, the truth of the matter is it has. It's been forgiven, but it's been we've been washed in forgiveness since before we existed. Since before we existed. Think about that. Christ went on that cross before I was born in this flesh. That means I was already, ironically, I was already cleansed of my sins before I was even born. Now think about that, because Christ, and a lot of other ways of looking at that. Colossians 1:14 from the Passion Translation, for in the Son all our sins are canceled, and we have the release of redemption through his very blood. We're forgiven through Jesus Christ, right? That's the central theme of, quote, the Christian world, is our forgiveness through Christ. But I still struggle sometimes with forgiving myself for past deeds, even though I know Christ has washed everything away. Do you ever struggle with things like that? Because it's like, and we don't want to forgive people that's really done things bad to us or about us or around us. There's things that's happened in people's lives all the way from early life, from childhood abuses of all kind to all kind of stuff through your whole life. Some of you may have been in situations where you've been abused by a partner, or you've been done wrong by somebody in a real close relationship. Just add we can come up with all kind of stuff where we've been hurt. And we can come up with all kind of things where we don't really like the idea of that person, in our eyes, getting away with that. They're getting away with that stuff. Listen, I know my friend Doug, we was talking about, me and him and Gary was talking about, one week we was talking about, you take the darkest, vilest person that we can picture in our mind that we would consider on a human plane as just that guy or whoever, they're evil. And I've been around some folks like that. I've been considered that way before, and still am by some. But I've been around some people like that, and watching them real close, little beams of light would creep out even in those people. I think the light of Christ is truly in every man, woman, and child. And no matter what we do, we take up here and our circumstances, or for whatever reason, we allow ourselves to become darkened of spirit. I mean, our spirit, we become do things that we shouldn't do, and we can get encased in darkness. Anybody ever felt like you've walked in darkness before and even then, beams of light would creep out. I don't think the darkness can keep the light suppressed. It cannot keep it suppressed, even in the vilest person. It creeps out in small gestures, or even a real evil person. You find out about them of acts of kindness that they perform, because I don't think they can help themselves, because Christ, the light, is there whether they like it or not, whether they're aware of it or not. Is this making sense? Whether they realize it or not, and it creeps out. Well, it's hard sometimes for us to look at people like that. We look at people like that, and all we want to see is the darkness. We don't look for those beams of light that's coming out of those people. And then sometimes those people, those beams of light, completely, and it eventually will, but does, even in this life, just overtakes the darkness. Doesn't light always overtake darkness? It always does. I don't matter how hard you try. once the light shows up, the darkness is suppressed. Forgiveness is what is forgiveness is looking at the darkness in someone's life and forgiving them for walking in darkness, because it's like, Father, forgive them. They know what they do. I've been in that situation. I've walked in darkness. You ever walked in darkness? In my young life, I walked for years, and I look back now and know I walked in darkness. But even then, we don't like to admit this as those guys that want to be tough guys, but even then, I had a soft heart. I walked around encased in what, putting out a facade that I was not a nice guy, that I was somebody you didn't want to mess with, and I could do things to make you believe that. But on the inside, that wasn't who I didn't feel that way. I didn't want to be that way. I just felt like that was what I was supposed to be at the time. And I ended up doing some awful things. And God has taken my life and turned it around. And look what I'm doing now. Not that that's all that great and wonderful. That's not what I'm talking about. But I've made a lot of wonderful friends, and people know that I come from a bad background. I mean, I didn't pop out and start preaching out of my cradle. Just the opposite. Soon as I got old enough to get around, I started doing my own thing. I started having fun. And then when I got old enough, I like left home and said, "Hey, I'm going to show these people how to live, how you're supposed to live." And some of you know what it got me. Got me in a lot of trouble. Put me in situations where I did things that I'm very ashamed of, embarrassed about, regret. Jails, prisons, the whole shebang, addiction, and all of it. And the Christ that we worship this day, right here, took all of that and showed me, look, nothing is too bad for me to forgive. Nothing is too bad. Nobody is too far gone for me to lift up. Because I don't know, I've said this before. If you hear anybody speaking and they're preaching to you about Jesus Christ, about our Father and our Holy Spirit, if it's not to lift you up, don't listen to it. Because if it's putting you down or telling you how bad you are or condemning you to hell and all those things that you hear a lot of times in, quote, religious circles, that, in my opinion, is not of the true God. God is love. God is not out to punish us. And I forgot to say, God's not mad at us. He is not mad at us. People get mad at us. People that are still wrapped in darkness get mad at one another. And sometimes they get mad at us. Some people, and even especially religious people, will look at some of us, you guys at the chapel, y'all can relate to this. They'll look at us and they cannot stand the fact that we are being blessed in different ways, or you're getting your life together, or all of a sudden you got a new life and things are going good. They're like, that's not fair. Do people not know what that guy did or whatever? I get that all the time. My friend Gary was there for me this week. I needed to talk to him. Something happened to me this week. Y'all know I put out little, there's somebody from my past. I was wondering when it was going to come. They went on one of my little messages and just went on a rant about me, about how sorry I am because of an incident over 40 years ago. Where were you 40 years ago? Some of you weren't even alive. And but the pain that this person feels from that is still real to them, but they won't let it go. Because you know what they want? They don't want me to be alive. They don't want me to be preaching. They don't want me to be blessed. They don't want me to be this person who people are listening to. And I feel sorry for them, but it still causes me pain when I have to deal with that kind of thing, just like it does anybody. But I talked to Gary about it. I'll be honest with you, he was there for me, and I cried some real tears, and because I still feel pain over things that I've done wrong. But as I sit here before you today, I know I have been completely forgiven through Jesus Christ, and it's been washed away. And Christ, as I teach you guys, all of you, our sins have been cast away and are forgotten. But I haven't forgotten them. And other people sometimes do not forget them, and we'll bring them up to each other. That's one of our weaknesses of the human flesh, right? We don't want to let stuff go. But it's like, that song. But there's people want me punished rather than blessed. But the God that we are continue to be punished, the God that we worship in this ministry right here is not about punishment. It's about forgiveness and kindness. Acts 26:18, I don't know what I just said, but anyway, you will open their eyes to their true condition so that they may turn from darkness to the light and from the power of Satan to the power of God. By placing their faith in me, they will receive total forgiveness of sins. Total forgiveness of sins. I like to say that again. Total forgiveness of sins, and be made holy, taking hold of the inheritance that I give to my children. We're holy. We are holy. All of us, we're holy. There's folks that are holy that don't even know they're holy. Christ is living in folks that don't even know he's living. The people that won't do that, choose not to forgive me, are holy, and they don't even know it. They have peace living in their heart, and they don't know it. Sometimes we are so blinded by our hate. We're so blinded by our unforgiveness. We're so blinded by allowing darkness to prevail that we don't know what to do. But you know what? In every one of us, eventually the light is going to overcome the darkness. It's going to overcome all of us. The person that dislikes you the most is going to come to love you, because there's only love in God. God is love. There's no way that we can continue to dislike or hate one another. It's impossible. And those of us that have people in our life, and I'm not the only one, people that you got people in your life, maybe some of you guys are at the chapel especially, that just cannot stand you because of something you've done or some things you've done. There'll come a time when that person that in this world hates you will love you, and you will know they love you, and you love them in return. We are one in Jesus Christ, right? That's why it's so important to look in the mirror and love the person in the mirror. because you can't love your neighbor if you don't love the person in the mirror. And another reason to love the person in the mirror is because that's Jesus Christ in the mirror. And that's also you and me and all of us are together in that mirror because we're all one. We're all one. So if I love myself in reality, I'm loving everybody. And if I hold grudges, I don't like it either. But if I hold resentments or grudges against one, I'm holding grudges against Jesus Christ. Psalm 51, 1 and 2. My favorite psalm is by my old buddy David. It says in the book that David was a man after God's own heart. Boy, it gave me hope because he is done. That is one messed up dude. He became a king. He was a warrior. He was an adulterer. He was a murderer. Let's just line it all up. He was almost, he was king of the nation, mighty warrior. He's the guy that slew Goliath when he was a kid. I mean, a main central figure in the Bible. They think he wrote most of the Psalms. Musician. He's a talented guy, but he was weak like us. He's the one that had the affair with Bathsheba, had her husband Uriah killed. I mean, if you don't know the story, study up on him. This is one messed up dude, and he's supposed to be a man after God's own heart. Think about that. God used him. God used him mightily, and we're still talking about him today. In this verse 1 and 2 of the 51st Psalm, this is when he's begging for forgiveness for what he did when he went with Bathsheba and had Uriah murdered and all that. He says, a prayer. He said, God, give me mercy from the fountain of forgiveness. I know your abundant love is enough to wash away my guilt. Because of your compassion is so great, take away this same shameful guilt of sin. Forgive the full extent of my rebellious ways and erase this deep stain on my conscience. Can you relate to that? I hope you can relate to that. Think about it. Forgive the full extent of my rebellious ways. I had some rebellious ways. I can look on this screen and know that some of you guys are rebellious. You ladies, I mean, we've been rebellious, right? Erase the deep stain on my conscience. You got things on your conscience that you just really regret. David is the same way. He's begging for God to erase that and remove that. I'm asking the same thing on all of our behalf today. Couple more scriptures and I'll get ready to close out here. Forgiveness. Are we forgiving people? Or are we just people that want to be forgiven, but then we don't want to forgive others? I'm working on that. I'm struggling with that. I want to forgive everyone in my past that I feel like's wronged me. I want to be forgiven. I want mercy, don't you? But if I want mercy, then I got to be merciful. 2 Corinthians 2:7 is Paul is writing a letter to the Corinthians, and he's talking to them about somebody that had caused him some problems there in that area and had kind of been mean to him, you know. And they were all talking about it, but here's something he tells them. This is the part I want you to hear. Instead of more punishment, because everybody kind of ostracized this guy that had got on Paul's wrong side, he said, instead of more punishment, what he needs most is your encouragement through your gracious display of forgiveness. Paul's telling them, hey, quit mistreating the guy. What he needs is your encouragement and your forgiveness. Don't that fit all of us? When somebody ticks us off, I don't care if it's somebody close to you or somebody from 40 years ago. What they need most is a gracious display of forgiveness. Look in the mirror and grant that gracious display of forgiveness to the person in the mirror. And if I truly get to where I can do that, I am forgiving everyone because we're all one. Psalm 1033, David wrote this too. You kissed my heart with forgiveness in spite of all I've done. You've healed me inside and out from every disease. We are all completely healed in Jesus Christ. Now, you may say, wait a minute, now I got this problem here. You're still healed. You're healed. You are healed in Jesus Christ, whether it manifests itself now or on the other side of the veil, as they say. It's done. You're healed. I don't use the term Christian a whole lot anymore, but I will say this. I pulled this off this morning. C.S. Lewis, a lot of you know him. He said, to be quoted, C.S. Lewis says, to be a Christian means to forgive the inexcusable because God has forgiven the inexcusable in you. Oh, let's see here. The God that we worship, Father, Son, Spirit, teaches us, and I'm pulling this out of some of the Paul Gray stuff that I got, and it's like how our God is and how, quote, the world is. God praises, the world condemns. God honors, the world shames, accuses, and judges. God promotes relationship, the world promotes religion. God gave it all on the cross. The world wants you to be punished more. God lavished blessings on us since before the foundation of the world. And the world wants us to beg for favor and blessings. The God, our God, is of oneness and of union amongst us. The world teaches separation. God wants us to focus on relational perfection between the Trinity, God, Father, Son, and us. And what does the world want? They want us to work on moral perfection. Got to be a better person. Got to do this. Got to do that. Listen, we ain't got to do scuba. We ain't got to do. God's done it all. He's the one that does everything. We need to relax, rest in Him, and guess what? Good deeds will come from us out of that. We get it backwards, folks. Y'all know how we do. We want to go out and we'll look in the mirror and we don't like that man or woman in the mirror. So I got to go do some stuff to improve my standing with God. In God's eyes, you are completely, totally accepted, unconditionally loved. You're included in His relationship for eternity, and that's a done deal. What we need to do is relax and enjoy it. What we do is run around trying to do more to impress and to think that's going to get us better standing. But that's been going on since the beginning of time, hasn't it? look at when they had the Lord's Supper, what was the first thing, when he said he was leaving, the first thing they did was start arguing over who's going to be the head honcho and who was going to be the right-hand man and all that. And they were like, they missed it. They missed it. And, you know, our friend Peter's like, I'm you know, what, you know the story. Peter was going to prove he was going to stick by him. What? Denied even knowing the guy 3 times before the rooster crowed, right? You ever been Peter? I have. I've denied God's existence. How have I denied God's existence? By some of my stupid decisions and by doing things that I shouldn't do. That's how we deny God's existence, is by living outside a conscious contact with the God of all creation, Father, Son, Spirit. All we got to do is relax and just let him reside, and we'll do what we need to do. And I don't know if I've said a thing today that makes any sense. I'm sweating. I know that. I done broke into a sweat. I need to get me one of them hairdos like them real preachers with the hair and start wiping my head with a handkerchief or something. But listen, I needed to talk today about forgiveness, and I don't know if I made a point about it, but I wanted to reassure myself that I'm forgiven. And how do I reassure myself that I'm forgiven? By telling you that you're forgiven. And if God can forgive you, I know he can forgive me. Don't hold grudges against yourself. When you stop holding grudges against yourself, I believe that you'll stop holding grudges against God's other children, because we're all one in Jesus Christ. There's no separation. There never has been. There's not now, nor they never will be. Take that to the bank this week, realizing that you are completely, totally loved and included, and nothing can change that. No past deed, no bad deed today, no future deed. It's all took care of. Relax and behave like you know that you are one in Jesus Christ. Thank you for listening to me today. I appreciate it. I'll turn it over to Doris now for a closing song, and I need somebody to do the closing prayer. Does anybody want to volunteer, or should I just pick you? Gary ran. I tell you what, Ricky, you do the closing prayer today, will you? After the song? All right, thank you.